Chapter 1.10 A Game of Thorns. Twitch felt it was best to not approach the main gate with a gigantic spider in tow, as he was likely to not be well accepted by Hawthorne's ranger guard. She was able to lead Fidget off the main road into the thicker briarwood forest that wrapped around one side of the settlement. From there, they were able to approach the wall without being seen. It was tall, constructed of vertical logs, with their tops chopped into pointy tips, a somewhat suitable defense against human invaders. Coonkin are exceptionally skilled climbers, though, and Twitch had yet to find a structure that she couldn't scale if she needed to. She and Fidget quickly scurried up and over the wall, onto the roof of a building adjacent to it, just in time to avoid the patrol of ranger guards that came around the far corner. She watched patiently with Fidget for them to pass, keeping her paw on him out of fear he'd decide to pounce down and have dinner. He had made a meal of a deer earlier in the journey, so he shouldn't be that hungry. But he was a growing boy, and she'd rather not risk it. Fidget seemed to understand that these particular humans were not for eating. Twitch did not seem to understand why these particular humans were not more numerous and on high alert. She finally concluded that they must have no idea of the attack in Ravenwood. When the coast was clear, Twitch hopped down into the alley between the buildings. Before Fidget could join her, she quickly turned and held up her paw for him to stop. She didn't think she would draw attention walking through the streets, but he couldn't tag along like he had been. She waved for him to go back, but he stood motionless on the wall, blinking at her in an expression that she could only interpret as, "Mommy, I don't understand." Twitch motioned again for Fidget to go back, and using her fingers to mimic a jumping motion, quietly whispered to him, "Jump!" Fidget quickly turned and scurried back up the timber and stucco wall to the roof, leapt across the gap over the alley to the other building, and then turned to look back down at her. She could see by the slight movement of his front half that he was happily wagging his back half. "Good boy," she whispered up approvingly. She readied herself to try and walk through town as normally as she could, and stepped out from between the buildings. The road through this part of town didn't have many travelers on it. Hawthorne was rather large, laid out in sections that were roughly block or wedge-shaped, with roads that traversed back and forth. All the streets were lined with pubs and shops, with inns and residential apartments above. As Twitch aimlessly walked along the road, trying to remember her way around town, Fidget quietly followed overhead, jumping roof to roof. The residents of both races living in those apartments would never know the monster that was above their heads that night. The gentle taps of spider legs, if heard at all, would be quickly dismissed as the landing of a flock of birds. And the neighbors would never know that they all heard the same taps, for who discusses a flock of birds landing on their roof while at the market the next day? "Are you lost, dear?" A kind, sweet voice surprised her from behind. Twitch turned around to see that the voice belonged to an old human lady. Her wrinkled face reminded Twitch of the sun-dried raisins she used to make with her uncle every summer. She wore a black dress and cloak, her hood pulled up over her silver-gray hair. She was shorter and more hunchbacked than the other humans she had seen, so she stood about the same height as Twitch. As such, Twitch's nose was at the level of the old lady's mouth, unfortunately for Twitch. "Oh," she recoiled. "No, She paused, turning her head away from the old lady's foul breath, taking the opportunity to look up and down the street and catch some fresh air. "Well," she continued, backing up a few steps, "yes, I am, actually. I'm looking for an inn. I believe it's called the Gilded Goblet," she finished, not entirely sure if she had remembered the name correctly or not. "Oh!" The old lady drew the sound out with the knowing approval of having more knowledge than one should have of such matters. "You're one of them academy witches, aren't you?" she asked, her icy blue eyes wide but her voice lower. "Yeah, the big old hat kinda gave you away." She motioned with both her hands dramatically over her own head. For a moment, Twitch was concerned that this would become a problem. But the old lady quickly nudged her and continued, "No worries. You all are welcome here. We just don't get very many Academy members this far from the inn. Speaking of which," she continued, "I might know where it's at." She paused, and the two eyed each other curiously, the one hoping the other would take the hint. Twitch hadn't interacted directly with humans very much in the past. However, she did know that they could be exceedingly polite, but also frustratingly unhelpful, if there wasn't some form of compensation involved. Without lowering her eyes, Twitch reached into the satchel and produced one of the gold coins the poachers had so graciously bequeathed to her. "Ah!" The old lady's face twisted into a smile as she eagerly accepted the offering. "Thank you, dear. Head that way." She pointed with a shaky, crooked finger up the street. "3 blocks. Turn left. Go to the end. Can't miss it." Twitch gave a slight bow as she backed away in the direction she was pointed. "Thanks. I'll just, thank you," she stammered, eager to put some distance between her and this strange old lady. She started to turn away when the old lady called after her. "Wait! Since you're going," she started. "Will you please take this letter?" she asked, pausing as she reached into her black robes, producing a folded piece of parchment, sealed shut with a red blob of wax. "To the innkeeper there for me," she finally finished, offering the letter to Twitch. She accepted it delicately with both paws, examining it over as she slipped it into her own satchel. She thought about playing the old lady's game so that she could get her coin back. After all, why should she do this old lady a favor now? "Yeah, all right," she casually agreed, as if it meant nothing. But it was both at the same time nothing and absolutely something, for character was what separated the Coonkin from the humans, not the tails. "Thank you," the old lady said with a slight bow and a sly smile as she turned and slowly shuffled back up the street. Twitch turned as well, and after a few paces, risked a backward glance. She was surprised to see the street was empty, the old lady nowhere in sight. She cautiously turned and started walking again, reaching into the satchel and removing the letter. She examined it, wondering if the old lady had noticed her eyebrow twitch when she recognized the wax seal. Not only did the crest belong to the Academy of High Magical Arts, but it was the Hierophant's personal emblem.